Good morning from outside Hull Paragon Station. 8 years ago in 2017 I first rode the line from Scarborough down to Hull, and it's taken me all this time to finally get around to come back to ride the line properly and do an in-depth documentary video on all the stations on this line. So I'm delighted to be joined by a special guest in a moment, and we're spending the entire day riding the line between here, Hull, up to Scarborough. And I'm not by myself today, as I've met up with Jamie, a local from Hull who runs a channel called Hull History Nerd, who creates videos about Hull's rich history, including, of course, several on the railways. The line between Hull and Scarborough opened in stages between 1845 and 1847 and became part of the North Eastern Railway in 1854, which then in turn during the groupings became part of the London and North Eastern Railway in 1923. The line has previously had more stations on it too, but today there are just 13, including Hull and Scarborough, and also Seamer, although that's also served by trains between Scarborough and York. But we start at Hull, specifically at the side of today's station building, which was once the original entrance.
So this would have been the original entranceway to the station, and this bit that sticks out here these days is actually the restrooms for the train staff, but if you can look up that archway up there, that's actually a bricked-in portico. This would have been the place where horses and carriages would have parked under during inclement weather, and where people would have gone in through the main doors, bought their tickets and gone straight onto the platform.
The creation of the Hull to Scarborough line was due to an entrepreneur from York named George Hudson, who had the nickname though of the Railway King, and he became the chairman of the York and North Midland Railway. Hudson's genius lay not in engineering but in finance and persuasion. He raised capital, pushed bills through Parliament and stitched together vast networks that transformed travel. But his empire was built on dubious accounting, and when the bubble burst, the Railway King fell from grace, ending his days in obscurity after once ruling the rails. Okay, so onto the line, and Cottingham is our first stop.
Right, this is Cottingham Station, and Cottingham is an oddity on this line because it's a village that's bigger than most small towns, but technically still a village. So the station complex is a lot bigger than you find in places like Hutton, Cranswick and Arran. It's actually closer in size to what you found at places like Filey and Bridlington. Even though you don't have as many lines, we have an old goods shed at the end there, and we had a massive coal depot just across there, and what we have here is the original 1847 building designed by G.T. Andrews. You see from the overhanging eaves and the special chimney pots, and this is a signature all the way along this line, all the way out past Bridlington. G.T. Andrews had this signature for this line, which was a chimney pot with two separate stacks that meet in the middle, almost like with an arch shape, like a railway tunnel. You can see it at crossing keepers' cottages. It's just everywhere on this line. The footbridge, it's one of the NER standard designs from the 1860s and 70s, of which you can see a perfectly preserved example in the National Railway Museum at York.
And down behind the old goods yard, I found a crossing. Cottingham has a foot crossing. Do you call it a barrow crossing? I just call it a foot crossing. I never realised. Where does this path go to? Is that just into the woods?
It goes back into a snicket that runs down the back of all of the main streets on New Village Road.
I'm sorry, you said the word snicket?
Yes.
I don't know what that means. Is that a Yorkshire word?
Oh, it is a very local word, yes.
Wow!
Ginnells,
no, I know what a ginnel is. Snicket?
Snickets. Ginnells, back alleyways, passages.
Oh, it's the same
foots.
thing?
Yeah, same kind of thing.
That's great. The building that was the old lamp room at the station is now a restaurant cafe called the Lamp Room. It does a cracking Sunday roast. They even provide paper timetables. But Jamie wanted to take me to the footbridge. We're on the footbridge. Now, Beverley, next station up, gets a whole train service. 3, 4, 5 trains a day. Normally the whole trains just go London to Hull, Hull to London, but some of them they run up to Beverley.
That's right.
Because it's a more major population.
Yeah.
But you're saying the fun thing to do is to be on the footbridge here when the empty train runs through.
Yeah.
Why is that exciting?
So basically, when they come back and they finish their run, they don't stop at Cottingham. They just bring the empty train through.
Okay.
And they come through at speed, which is usually about 50-60 miles an hour-ish.
Okay.
And a great fun thing to do is to just kind of bob down on the bridge and look through the bottommost thing.
Like we are now.
So it looks like it's kind of hurtling towards you, and part of your brain is kind of going, move, 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 even though you know you're safe on the bridge.
I can't but help feel that would have been better back in the days of steam, like a steam loco.
You'd have had a face full of steam.
Hurtling through, yeah. So you're almost recreating that, okay.
In a sense, yeah.
Yeah, so the few services a day run by Hull Trains use their Hitachi Class 802 trains. But the rest of the time, with the services being operated by Northern, you'll see a mix of Class 155, Class 158 and my favourite, the Class 170 units on this line. And the next stop is the market town of Beverley, which once inspired the naming of the city of Beverley in Massachusetts, which in turn was the indirect source of the naming of Beverly Hills in California. Jamie, I'm going for the Dutch tilt. The obvious burning question I must ask about Beverley is, why is it sort of inside a building? Why does it have this roof?
I think part of that was down to the fact that Beverley is, after Hull, probably the most prestigious town of the northeast. In fact, until Hull kind of came of age in the Industrial Revolution, Beverley was the biggest and most important and wealthiest town in all of East Riding. And it really needed a station that befitted that. So rather than just have a little station like Cottingham, which we've just seen, which services a similar number of people, instead they went for something a bit bigger and a bit grander.
And I'm going to come round because Jamie's just discovered a Beverley Station history board.
It's really cool.
Let's come round. So this wasn't here last time you were here. Have you learned new things?
No, but there is a lovely photograph here of what it would have looked like before the 1960s. So we've actually got all the goods sheds that would have been by the side of the railway, all the extra tracks, the coal yard, the sidings. And these days it's just 2 tracks that run straight through the middle of the station and then head up towards Bridlington. It's amazing to look at this picture and see what it is we've lost.
All right, we found the map, but this is, I was going to say before I saw it, there's one of these. I think it's identical, isn't it, in York Station? So did the North Eastern Railway just build a whole bunch of maps and slap them up?
Yeah, basically. There's several dozen of these still around, I think, in the world. Pickering's got one.
But the amazing little factoid that you just gave me was, go on.
Oh yes, there's a railway line on this map that was never built, although it was planned at the time of them making the map, and it's this one here, the Holderness Light Railway, which would have gone all the way to North Frodingham from Beverley.
So they put it on the map but never built it?
Never built it.
And whilst at Beverley, you can't miss the impressive Beverley Minster. With its lofty perpendicular towers and splendid early English nave, it's bigger than a lot of cathedrals in the country, and more impressive too. But we've got to press on and visit other stations up the line. And the next stop up the line is actually the least used station on the line. It's surprisingly not a request stop. I thought it might have been, as Arran Station got just under 1,800 passengers in the statistics for last year, which works out at just under 5 passengers a day. Looking at the stats for all the stations, Hull and Scarborough are obviously the 2 busiest stations on the line, where Beverley, where we just were, is in 3rd place. At Hutton Cranswick, the next stop up the line, the original station master's house with waiting room is still there, and it's Grade 2 listed nowadays as it's been well preserved. Also, the local Hutton Cranswick in Bloom Group have applied some lovely touches to the station, including this replica wooden train which uses recycled materials. But we carry on one more stop up the line as Jamie and myself get to Driffield, which, by the way, appears to have this gorgeous station cat. Driffield.
Driffield.
Great name.
Yes.
Not as good as Nafferton, the one up.
No, Nafferton is a better name.
That is a fun name. But Driffield used to be a junction, is that right?
It did, yeah. Back in the days of the canal, it was an agricultural centre and a market town, so a lot of produce was shipped here and then distributed using the railways. So it was actually right at the junction of several different lines. There was the Malton and Driffield line that took it north, there was the Selby and Driffield line that went through Market Wheaton to the south, and then there was obviously the one that we're riding today, which goes between Scarborough and Hull.
So this would have been a junction, but always still 2 platforms? Were there more platforms, do we think?
There was only the 2 platforms, but there was obviously a goods yard here as well, which was just where the car park is today.
Seems to me like maybe every station up this line had a goods yard.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, wow. You mentioned canal.
Yes.
Which prompts me to say, shall we go for a little walk? Just literally 2 minutes in that direction, is that right?
That's right.
There's a canal.
Let's go and check it out. This is actually the canalised version of the River Hull, and it effectively takes cargo, or it would have taken cargo, up and down the river from Hull itself. The Hull is navigable up to a certain point, but obviously if you can make a canal you can reach much further and you're not reliant on tides and so forth. So this was a really important route into the agricultural centre of the Wolds. So from here you would have been able to, via the railway, and before the railway via obviously horse and cart, you'd have been able to reach the sort of surrounding areas, bring all the goods here and then send them into the populated places like Hull. And of course with the railway you could move all that stuff so much quicker, so eventually the canal kind of got surpassed in its importance, and eventually places like Bridlington started to become much more of an agricultural centre, and Driffield slowly started to find its star fading, and it ended up just a nice picturesque place on the route to Bridlington.
Before Bridlington is Nafferton, and it's not too dissimilar to Hut and Cranswick, in that there's a station master's house. This one is gorgeous brown and red brick with a slate roof, and even has a Tuscan-style portico at the front. It's just fabulous. But then it is on to arguably the best station on this line, and the one that originally made me want to come back and explore this line in full.
Yes, it's select the signal and know that I'm ready to depart.
Aha, thank you mate. So this is gorgeous, Bridlington, maintained by volunteers, but you said something like this is the linchpin of this line. Is that true?
So when the line was being first created, it wasn't a planned through route to Scarborough originally. The Hull and Scarborough Railway Company had a line from Hull to Bridlington, but George Hudson, who was the railway king who owned and rented loads of railway lines across the northeast, he decided to rent the Hull and Scarborough line, but he also was on the board of governors for the York and North Midland Railway, which had a line from Scarborough coming down through Seamer, and he had a plan to make that extend to Bridlington, and rather than having the two meet at opposite ends of Bridlington and people have to get out and walk, he decided to use all of his connections to make the two meet here in this one station, so you could get a through train all the way from Hull to Scarborough and back again. It's beautiful, yeah. There's a real local pride with the volunteers who look after all the flowers and plant them and water them and replace them. It's gorgeous.
But I'm saddened because I can see that where the buffet is, it doesn't look like it's open anymore. So I'm a little bit sad.
Food sadness.
Yeah, but is it just closed because it's Sunday, or is it closed for good?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think we should go and see if we can find a sandwich.
I'll be really sad if the buffet is closed because it was outstanding.
Yeah.
But Bridlington Station is outstanding.
Yeah, it's lovely.
We do grab a snack, but not at Bridlington's buffet, unfortunately, because sadly it does look like it's permanently closed. But we carry on north towards Scarborough, and our next stop is Bempton, where there's only a single platform here, because at this point the line has become a single track. And it's not quite as quiet as I'd hoped. At Bempton, yeah. I was going to do a whole piece on like, it's quiet and idyllic here, single platform, and then this is not the first time I've been undone by filming at a station by some gardening noise being in the adjacent garden. Welcome to Bempton. So a quick pass through Hummonby and our train carries on, taking us to the seaside town of Filey. The station here has these green coloured doors which look like a loading bay, which I just quite like. But more impressive is of course the fact that it's another station on this line with a train shed roof over it. The footbridge though is intriguingly squeezed to be inside of it, and that's odd when you realise that the roof doesn't run the entire length of the platforms and there is a section that is out in the open. Also, it made me chuckle that also fans of the roof here are the local pigeon and seagull population, so watch out if you're eating ice cream in the open here, because seagulls like those sweet treats too. Alright, back on the train, through Seamer, and to the last stop, the terminus on the line, the last station on our trip, as we make it to Scarborough. I'm outside the front of Scarborough Station. You can see there the impressive clock tower. A lot of Scarborough Station. It's having some renovation work done to it at the moment, so there's a lot of temporary fencing, a lot of scaffolding which is up, so that's why that's all fenced off. We can't get to that. I can't even get a decent shot of the outside of Scarborough Station. On the way in, we saw a flash of the longest bench, the longest railway bench. What we'll do is that I'll chat to Jamie as the train leaves in a minute as we go back to Hull, and I'll make sure I get a shot of the longest bench. Let's go find Jamie.
So, Scarborough. It is the queen of the resorts on the East Riding coast, even though it is technically in North Yorkshire. It's, along with Bridlington and Hornsey and Withensea and Filey, it's one of those resorts that for generations of West Riding holidaymakers used to be their destination of choice. In fact, even when the railways were taken away from places like Hornsey and Withensea, the descendants of those Wesseys were still coming across to holiday in those places right to the modern day, probably not even remembering why. But it's because the advent of railways to places like Scarborough and Bridlington and those other places effectively opened up seaside holidays for people who might even have never seen the sea in their entire lives. Landlocked places like Huddersfield and Bradford and Sheffield, and they would come in their droves on special excursion trains that were huge long trains, which explains why some of these stations had such long platforms and long benches. They would turn up, disgorging thousands of holidaymakers every summer to places like Scarborough.
And on our way out, I got a shot of that longest bench at Scarborough Station, and thank Jamie for our wonderful day. So Jamie, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I've had a great day as well. I obviously have to say that because it'd be weird if I didn't say that. So, no. How many films have you made now? Videos on the Hull History channel? How many?
Yes.
Many. So I will link to below, obviously, and go watch some Jamie. And there's more on there about the railways and stuff. So if you want even more in-depth stuff, Jamie's your man. That's it. We're gonna sit back and relax and just probably have a little snooze.
Probably. It's been a long day.
All the way back to Hull. All right. Thanks very much.
Goodbye.
See you in the next video.